Well, good afternoon to anybody who may be listening today. It's nice and warm here in the workshop. I've got the fire going, although it's not cold outside, to be perfectly frank. And over the past 2 or 3 days, I've picked up 3 bags of coal and 6 packs of those synthetic logs, not synthetic, but artificial logs that you can buy, which are very good. And I got a higher quality coal this time, and so the stove has been just running beautifully. I came into the workshop yesterday at about this time of the day, and it was 35 degrees in here, which is really too warm altogether. And I'd put 2 of those logs on, so I understood that they are more powerful than the coal. So I'm now using a combination, although really the stove's just ticking over with glowing coals, and that's fine. And I wanted to take the opportunity to speak about music, because my view and understanding and relationship with music has changed. I think I'm not the only one. And one of the reasons it's changed is because I've come to understand the extent to which music has been used against us and our people. I started to discover this after listening to Mark Devlin, who's written 2 books called Musical Truth 1 and 2. And I haven't read either of them, but I've attended several of his talks. And he produces some very interesting facts about the music industry and about, well-known musicians and their connections and the mysteries surrounding them. And some of his work, I think, is just paraphrasing and repeating work, researchers that went before him. But I do think he's done some original work too, so, kudos to him for that. But he's not one of my people. He doesn't follow the one true God. And I've crossed swords with him on several occasions. Not crossed swords, but I've asked for a clarification, and I've not really received any satisfaction at all. I think he knows who I am now, so if I put my hand up at one of his talks, I probably will be the last person he'll ask. He doesn't care for questions about the Bible. But he exposed many of the musicians of the past 20, 30, 40 years for their involvement in what I would consider to be satanic practices. He sees it more, I think, as just an outreach of the deep state, because he's a truther and not a believer in the one true God. And he made the claim that every single musician and every single actor was part of the Illuminati, or a person inside the inner circle and therefore involved in stuff that is unspeakable and really shouldn't be considered. But I objected to that. I think that the hand of the Lord is still strong, and there are certainly musicians, actors and artists and writers whose hand has been guided by the word of God, by the spirit of righteousness. We have an advocate, and a very powerful one. I think it's important to remember that. But he rejected that. I think I might have mentioned Dylan as somebody that I quite often mention, because I see him as a prophet, and he poo-pooed that idea. Even when I pointed out that Dylan had written, you've got to serve somebody, which is probably the straw that broke the camel's back for him, because he doesn't believe any of that serving of anybody. He's a truther, so he believes that we should serve ourselves and empower ourselves, and everything else is just static and confusion. So it probably wasn't the best Dylan song to mention, but I think it's a very important one. You know, I don't think Dylan was under any obligation to have a Christian period, but he said it properly in that song. You have to serve somebody. It may be the devil, it may be the Lord, but you have to serve somebody. One of the two, actually. One of the two. So it is. It's a binary decision, choice, destiny, you could say, to account for the way that some people are just almost perversely unable to understand, and some people seem to come to it very naturally. I don't know exactly why. But the upshot is that music had, I think because of that to a large extent, also I saw so much pride and, I don't know, the expertise of some of these musicians and the way that they're adored and worshipped. It became distasteful to me. And now we can see, I like to play the guitar. I haven't played for a while. But I've been watching YouTube, and, you know, if there's a guitar player, I'll quite often click on it. And there's a young fellow that has been cropping up on my feed, and he's very good indeed, and very dexterous and clever with the guitar. And he plays some cool tunes. Unfortunately, he doesn't wear shoes. And I don't like it. I don't like it when people don't wear shoes. I think we should wear shoes. But that seems to identify him to me as more than likely an adherent of the New Age movement. They don't like to wear shoes very much. I could be wrong, but to me, we should wear shoes on our feet, unless we're standing on holy ground, and he wasn't sitting or standing on holy ground. He was just playing the guitar. So I wrote a note in the comments saying that he could, if he wore shoes, he could tap out the rhythm, which I thought would be even better than the excellent way that he'd already played. But I see a lot of those videos of experts and great, musicians and tremendous skill, and they don't really do anything for me, apart from admiring their skill momentarily. But there seems to be no content beyond the showing off of skills. The content gets lost somehow. I was thinking about this. One of my favourite players is Tony Rice, but I only like Tony Rice because of a single song, and I forget what it's called now, Manzanita perhaps. There's a recording on YouTube and he plays that, and to me the spirit is present in that rendition. But I've seen other things that he's done and I haven't been interested in them. And the same is true of Billy Strings, who's an acoustic guitar player, rated very highly among flat pickers. And he recorded a session on an old Martin, I think, in one of those guitar shops, an old Martin that's probably worth about £50,000. And it's the session, if you find it on YouTube, where you can hear a train cutting in towards the end, and it sort of joins him in the stuff that he's playing. And to me, that's a sign the spirit seemed to be present in that, and that's what I look out for in music. And I honestly don't see it or hear it very much. And it's not related to technical expertise. It's related to the righteousness somehow of the player or the singer. Um, I mean, all music really is praising God, or I would prefer that it is praising God. And so, what you need is, um, a lowly musician or singer praising God. And you can find videos on the internet, I think, that would match that description. But they're not the well-known ones, of course, because the well-known ones are, they're like the podcasters who've got hundreds of thousands of subscribers. I suppose they have their limitation, especially in the realm of philosophy and theology or faith, because large numbers sometimes don't really equate with holiness, righteousness. And that's the best part of any music, so it seems to me. The musicians were greatly admired, I think, in the olden days. Well, admired. They were treated as an important part of life among our people. And they had, in one of the books that I read recently, I think I was probably reading Nehemiah, when they have particular places where they live, the singers and the players, they would have been called to precede our people, perhaps going out to war, even the trumpeters around the walls of Jericho, but also, singing the Psalms and praising God. How good and how pleasant it is, to be among the brethren and to praise the Lord. And music can add to that experience somehow, or make it more precious. And I think it's important that we do play music, because, if we don't play it, nobody else can. It's not something that animals can produce, not the way that we do it. We've been given this ability. It's a God-given gift. And it seems reasonable that we should celebrate it in as far as we can, and try to limit all this pride nonsense that creeps in when people become overly impressed with their skills, their excellence, whatever it may be. So these days I mainly listen to, I'll occasionally listen to some old music. Another track, I think, where the Spirit of God is present is if you go and listen to Dylan singing "It's All Right, Ma" at just as him and the guitar. I think it's at the Fillmore concert hall, probably with quite a big audience, and he just gives such a powerful rendition of that song. Flawless, it would seem. There's a spiritual energy running through it, running through his execution. I so loved that because, well, one of the reasons I was remembering, he speaks of flesh-coloured Christs that glow in the dark. Every single line of that poem is or that song is almost like an accusation against the Pharisees or the Edomites, or whoever it is that is oppressing us. My auntie had a flesh-coloured Christ that glowed in the dark. She lived in a house near where I now live, and when I was a child I stayed at her house sometimes overnight, and I do recall waking up in the night and seeing this glowing Christ, because it was in the back room. They didn't have it in the rooms where they were, my auntie and her husband, my uncle. It was in the back room, and it was curious, and it made an impression upon me, this plastic piece of tack. And my auntie was a Catholic, and I wasn't very impressed with that piece of tack at the time, and my opinion of the Catholic religion hasn't really improved through the years at all. I've never been fond of it. Well, I'm not fond of any, practicing faith, I suppose, but. And so there, I would have been about probably 10 or 11 when I first encountered this flesh-coloured Christ. Or perhaps it was a Virgin Mary that she had. Being a Catholic, it may have been a Virgin Mary. I can't recall now. But it was only a few years later that I started listening to music, and then I heard Dylan proclaiming this criticism, really, of our consumerist society in that verse, I think, and just the meaninglessness of our modern world. To me, Dylan saw that. I do believe he's a prophet. The Lord still has prophets, there's no question of it. So there's still some songs that I like, but I don't listen to them very often. And I just listen to that kind of, I listen to Air, the French chill out, I don't know whether they're called a chill out group, electronic music mainly, that just has nice sounds that you can relax to, and they produce nice vibrations. But I am quite wary of some of the bands that I used to like, and now I just find they have lost their appeal completely. Most of the music that I used to listen to has lost its appeal. But there are some exceptions when it just feels as though there's a spiritual power in the music, and I really jive with that. And so, it's not completely silent in my house, but it's certainly, music was the soundtrack, like a lot of people, I think. I just had records on all the time, and I was always trying to find the latest sound and the latest thing, and so on and so forth. I remember when I heard the first Dire Straits album, I was absolutely ecstatic. I thought it was brilliant, and I played it a lot. And I admired Mark Knopfler and his skill. But I became a bit disillusioned when I heard that his brother was the other guitarist, and he'd been kicked out of the band after the first LP. I thought that was a mistake. I don't like it when that stuff happens. And now, I'd almost do anything rather than listen to Mark Knopfler playing the guitar. Now that I've seen more of him and seen interviews with him and understood how, well, it's probably not his fault, but he certainly, made the most of it, the way that people have worshipped him over the years. And you could say that of many musicians, that people start to say that they're great and that they're amazing, and you get a kind of a cult feeling. I've no time for that stuff these days, and I think a lot of people haven't. If you're following Christ, really, the music is very secondary. But if you haven't heard any of Mark Devlin's stuff, then you can find it. I think several talks online. He was rehashing some of Bill Cooper's stuff, but I still think he's worth listening to. But you do have to remember where his allegiance lies, and it lies with himself. that's what it comes down to. And to me, that's too, I suppose you could call it egocentric. So we're in the doldrums now. We're in the run up to Christmas, and the longest day is perhaps tomorrow. I have a translation to do, but I can't access it due to some software problem. And so, really, I'm at a loose end, and it's just there's a sort of an unearthly quiet about the land. The days are dark and brooding. The weather is unseasonably warm, and there's just a strange atmosphere surrounding everything, and very strange reports that can be heard if you're careless enough to actually listen to what they say on the news programs or on the conspiracy programs and so on and so forth. I try to avoid them in the main because, well, what's real and what is unreal? This is the problem. Again, it comes down to discrimination. The Bible is real, but outside of that, not so much, I think. God bless this afternoon.